Today I'm going to talk to you guys about front end tuning on the KMD-FR01 chassis. It's actually quite simple. There's not a lot going on in terms of front end setup, not a lot of tricks or anything like that. The front end is actually quite planted as long as everything is built properly. The car should handle very well. One of the biggest things that you can do to the front end is to actually program the board so that the servo works properly. On RCP tracks, the friction between the tire and the track is really high, and if your servo doesn't have the correct program settings, then it's going to be very slow reacting. As you can see here, if I lift up the car, I'll show you how quickly my servo is turning left and right, and that it's overshooting when it comes back to neutral. So if I let go of the steering, you can see how much it wiggles back and forth. So that's actually programmed. So in the programming for steering power, I set that to strong, and for steering speed, I set it to fast, and for steering punch, I've put it to 3. And for the neutral, I put it to narrow. So when you put all those things together, you're going to get a very quick reacting car that's also going to center properly when going down the straights. For tow bars, I'm using a 0-degree toe, so there's no toe in, no toe out. I find that makes it the best for handling, gives it some stability on the straights, and a good turn in as well as a good corner exit. One of the important things to know or to look for is if your lower arm is actually rubbing against the tow bar. So if that's the case, you can just file away a little bit of that leading edge of your lower arm to make sure that it doesn't hit the tow bar. Okay, any kind of binding in the suspension, in the front suspension, is going to give you poor handling. For camber and caster, I have them both set to 0. So I have 0 degrees camber, 0 degrees caster. I just find that helps with traction rolling. So the less camber you have, the less caster you have, the less likely you're going to traction roll on high-speed corners. Here in the front, I'm using PN medium tires. If you went to a firm tire, you could probably afford to have a little bit of caster and a little bit of camber, but with the grippy PN mediums, anything that has any camber or caster in it is probably going to lead to traction rolling. One very important thing to note is that these kingpins here, if they do fall out while you're racing, you're most likely going to break your top front arm. So if that comes out, the arm will be loose, and we found that happened a couple times where the pin came out. So make sure that you're always securing your pin using an E-clip. This is a kingpin from an MR02 to give you that extra length that you need. So in terms of springs, I'm simply using a PN red spring from the double A-arm front suspension system. The PN red is an older spring, so they don't make it anymore, but it's basically one less from yellow. On any Mini Z, I find that the front ride height is a very important setup that most people overlook. Most guys, I think, set their cars too low in the front, and this doesn't allow the front of the car to roll from side to side and actually causes traction rolling, believe it or not. So here you can see that I have my front wheel on it, or my car on its blocks, and the front ride height is set to -3 millimeters. So it's 3 millimeters below the chassis level. I think that's usually a good setup range for the KMD-FR01. So when the car is on the ground, you can see that there is a lot of clearance in the front of the chassis, but as you move towards the back, it gets much lower. So the front of the car is actually pointing upwards while the rear of the car is actually sagging down.